Hey Abby, I hope you are having a great week. I just wanted to go over your poetry and I just looked at this. Um, and so you did a phenomenal job. I know poetry can be one of the harder genres to write. Um, and I wanted to let you know that you did a great job. I loved your poems. Before we get started, I did just want to go over one thing. Um, at the very beginning, I'm going to share this slideshow with you as soon as I'm done recording this. But right here, there's a Google form, and it's about using Adobe Spark. And so I know you did that for your informational piece for both of them, and I think that they turned out beautifully. I think that adding the pictures really helped your overall piece work together even better. And so that is an option again when you're doing your poetry, to use a digital format like that if you would like to. So I'm just going to have you, if you could, fill out this Google form that I made. It's just a few questions. Did you like it? Why? Did you think it was helpful for your writing piece? Did it make your writing less effective, or do you think it helped make it more effective? And if you don't want to answer these why ones, that's okay. I would appreciate it, but if not, that's totally okay. If you don't have time, you can just do the multiple choice. Have you ever considered using digital media for poetry? Because I had not before we kind of started this online writers workshop. I had never thought of poetry in that way before. And then just what are your thoughts on the online writers workshop so far? And then if you have anything else to let me know, you can say it there. So that's totally up to you when you want to do that, but I linked it right at the top, and I also linked it in your notes over here in the private comment area. So let me present this. All right. So we did our poetry unit. It was a great start. You did a wonderful job with all of your pieces. So let's go through them. I picked this one on purpose because your second poem was about the dog, but you did a great job. You used so many different kinds of figurative language throughout your different poems, but I wanted to tell you, you did a great job because it wasn't overpowering. Sometimes when we're writing poetry, it can be really easy to get caught up in, oh, I need to use figurative language, and you use so much of it that it's overwhelming, but you did not do that. It was the perfect amount. And so I just wanted to point that out because that was really great. And then also, I wrote, even though your poems were on completely separate topics, you did a really good job. They were both engaging and enjoyable. So even though they were both very different, and one was cute and suspenseful, but the other one was pretty poignant and was very deep, totally different types of writing that you did there. And they both worked really well. They were very engaging to read. So great job with that. Some other things that I wanted to point out, you used a varied sentence structure, and so this is what one of my comments will be in your actual Google Classroom. But your varied sentence structure and where you put your line breaks, you did a great job with that. That's very consistent with how poetry can break sentence structure. And then also you would go from having a couple long ones to 1 to 4 sentence or 1 to 4 word kind of phrases in there. And so that works really well with the poetry genre, and you did such a great job with that. Your poem Existence had a very powerful ending, and as you read it, that really sat with me after I finished it. You're reading through this poem, and you did a great job writing it. It was very engaging to read, and then you get to the end and you just kind of sit there for a second, and it really makes your reader think about those things. And so as the poet, that is a great job to you because it really worked, and I appreciated it as your reader. And then again, awesome job with the figurative language. It was great. And then I also enjoyed the little bit of suspense in the second poem, even though it was kind of happy and it was interesting, but it was that little bit of suspense worked really well, and it was interesting to read. So great job with that. Then I had one question. I have two questions, but the first one, for your first piece, have you ever considered adding some other kinds of senses to describe the world and you talked about where people are kind of fighting and there's all this like anger versus when people are kind and they're nice to each other and we're one people. You used a lot of imagery in that poem and it worked so well, but most of it was the visual type of imagery. And so included in that are smells and sounds and tastes and touch. And so could you include any of those other four in a different way in your poem that would kind of draw it back in for your reader and just get us into this world where the poem is? I have this here because, like, if this lady is actually yelling, you would be able to hear that. And so if people are fighting, if they're fighting physically, do you hear weapons clashing? If they're fighting over social media, do you hear clicking in that little click, 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 click? If they're fighting like this, if they're yelling at each other, you would hear them screaming. Or smells. Do you smell the world like burning because people are just going, they're so violent? Maybe just if you wanted to explore those things. That's totally up to you. These are just some options for your revisions. But I am going to give you a list that we looked at also when we were writing our poems that was really helpful for where do I start with revisions for this. So that's just a thought. So here is this list. I do have the rest of this article linked here. If you click on, if you see when I hover over it, it kind of brings it up. When I share this with you, you can go to that link if you would like to read the rest of the article. But this was the part that was important about the revisions. And we had kind of phrased it as you're going to explore your poem a little more. Revision is like, we tend to think about that with the other types of genres, but how can you explore your poems a little more? And so none of these are mandatory. These are all just options. If you want to pick one, great. If you want to pick a few, great. If you decide you want to do something else, that's fine too. But the purpose of revising and experimenting is to help the poem say what the poet really wants it to say. So how can you make the poem be exactly what you want it to be? Is there anything that would help you to do that? And so, do you need a new title? Are there cliches or phrases you've heard before that you would want to get rid of to make it more unique and original? Some of the senses, smells and sounds. Are there any lines that don't fit with the rhythm or the idea of your poem? And so those are just some options. I wanted to present those to you so that you would have them now and in your future, because I know you have so much potential as a writer, and I really think that I can see you doing this in the future. And so I wanted to make sure that you had this list of revision kind of questions when you're experimenting with your poem. And so another option for revising is taking out unnecessary words. This is a quote from Bobby Katz, and it says, "I know a poem is finished when I can't find another word to cut." A lot of times you see those poems that are so succinct and there's maybe like 10 words and that's the poem. And I'm not saying you have to get to that point, but there's a lot of those extra words just in general that we want to take out because it would help the parts of our poem, like the figurative language that you used, stand out even more when we don't have all the extra filler words in there. But again, this is just an option for when you're looking at the revisions for your poem. Here's an example. It was from the New York Times. They had put this poem up of how the author had revised and crossed off, and they look at this down here. The shape isn't working. It's too static. It was going all over, and they said that's not working well for the piece. They wanted to have Spanish in here, and they said it's not working with my piece. And so they just take them out. They took out extra words and phrases. They even added some things they wanted to revise, and then they said, never mind. And so this is an example of what your piece can look like after, and that's okay. A good option is to make a copy of it so you don't lose your original copy if you're doing it digitally. But if you have it printed, this is kind of what your revisions might look like, and that's okay. You don't have to have it right the first time by any means. And so this is just an example. If you wanted to take a look at that, I'm going to, again, share this PowerPoint with you so you'll be able to see it. And then I just wanted to leave you with some inspiration. keep up the great work. You are doing such a great job with the whole online writers workshop, and especially with your poetry. I can't wait to see your week 2 revisions and what you kind of choose to do with your poems. And have little Patrick, I'm rooting for you because I am. You're doing such a great job and I'm so proud of you. So keep up the great work with your writing. I can't wait to see what you come up with for next week, and I'll see you later. Bye.